Okay, cool.
Awesome. Hey, so who am I here with?
My name's BrianCuree.
All right, Brian, where are you from?
I am from Central Florida, right here in Florida.
All right, you didn't have to go too far.
Not far
All right,
at all.
and you said you've had a podcast you launched last April?
Yep, last April, in the metaverse.
All right. What does that mean, by the way?
Well, basically, think of the metaverse as like the internet. Nobody really owns it. But we have a virtual world built in the metaverse. So we have a live studio, where we meet people just like this in a virtual setting, and we host a live show every week with guests, and we have a live audience. So we bring in mics down from the ceilings, and they get to be a part of the show and ask questions, and we just record it all and put it out on a podcast.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Like, what's the name of this podcast?
The podcast is called Stories We Live. So it's brand new, so I'm trying to remember too. Stories We Live, but the easiest way to find it is just look up Killer Bee Studios, and you'll see a little thumbnail pop up that shows Stories We Live with 2 avatars. That's us, and it's just all talking about stories, our everyday life.
Okay, just who are the storytellers? Are you guys like you, maybe a co-host?
So me and a co-host, but we actually have guests coming in from Nashville because we work in the broadcast industry. So we have music artists that come in, they perform. We actually just had a 7-time American Ninja Warrior in there. And if you're an entrepreneur, we have Mark Miller from Chick-fil-A coming in less than a month. So from all over, everybody has stories that I think we can all find out that we open up and share our stories. We're a lot more relatable than maybe we realize.
Absolutely. I'm super behind that. So what got you into doing this?
Man, to be honest, I poked fun on the metaverse stuff all the time. And I was going to a conference. I put on a pair of headsets because we're digital consultants. And when I put it on, I was like, whoa, this is a lot further along than I realized. And it's like having a real conversation where you can see hands and make eye contact. And I was like, maybe we better look into this a little bit more. And then it just turned into a podcast because, great interviews, about 40 minutes long, real conversations. I'm like, man, these are great stories. We need to get them out to people that don't have headsets or don't want to step in the metaverse. So podcasting was just a no-brainer.
Okay. And so you mentioned growing, and that's why you're here at PodFest. You want to learn about growing your podcast. So tell me a little bit about that journey. Like, what's been your journey in trying to figure out all the things you need to do to grow your podcast?
Oh man, I mean, there's a lot of great, guests here, or speakers that's sharing some great insight about, how do you get the most out of it? I guess setting real expectations first off. I mean, everybody wants to launch a podcast and have, 100,000 downloads first episode. That ain't going to happen.
Yeah, it takes a while to get there.
Yeah, it takes a while to get there. So I think what I've learned so far is enjoying the process of doing it because you love to do it, not just do it just because you want to, make a lot of money. Do it because you love doing it, right, and put that time and build those connections, those relationships, network with other podcasters, be guests, have them on as guests. We've already lined up other guests just from here. Yeah. So it's so growth it's slow and steady.
Yeah.
But enjoy it.
And what have been some of the highs and lows in your journey so far, just trying to build and grow your podcast?
Oh man, I guess I would say probably I don't know if I've read. I mean, again, we're pretty new at it, so highs and lows. I think, let me say this. One thing I've been trying to do is become a better listener, because what I've learned is in the world, there's a lot of people that like to talk a lot, but there's not as many people asking the right, meaningful questions. So for myself, it's probably not really answering your question or high or low, because I don't know what the highs are yet or the lows. I just know I'm learning it takes time. But for myself, I'm really learning how to slow down and ask questions, become a better listener.
Yeah, that's, we all need that. I mean, it's so important in the world today. Like, what do you think, what does that mean to be a good listener? Like, what does good active listening involve?
From what I'm learning is that it's being present. So like, for instance, right now you and me are talking, I'm looking at you, but I could be like figuring out, okay, who's the next person I need to connect with that's not listening. That's like, I'm just here, but I'm not really present. So it's slowing down, being present in the moment, and then also just being there to connect, build relationships, but it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time.
Yeah,
takes time.
Absolutely. All right. In terms of like the tools that you use that help you kind of stay on top of everything that you're doing with the metaverse work, and then also this, new podcast, if you could envision a tool that gave you, the functionality that you needed to be successful, what is some of that functionality that you would want in that tool?
Oh man, I think that right now would be like, I like to focus more on doing the interviews and the shows and not all the editing and stuff. So like getting that off of my plate that's a huge help right there. Because I mean, that all adds up. A lot of times when you think I want to start a podcast, you're not thinking about all the other work, like, the optimizing, writing the descriptions, editing the podcast, all those, and distributing the podcast and marketing it. That's a lot of work. So, I mean, I think some people are gifted at being in the podcast, being the host, or being a co-host, or maybe optimizing it, writing that copy, finding the guests. So I think for me, is like trying to get the things off of my plate that, okay, yeah, I can do, but it'd be better, useful if I gave that to somebody else to do and get that off of my plate so I can spend the time preparing and making those connections. So.
Yeah, I feel like that's a very common story. It's like people get started and, they do everything on their own, I mean, for various reasons, but the idea of growth and marketing is always kind of like the last. It's like an afterthought almost, because after you've spent so much time, researching and planning your interviews and then, doing all the editing, it's like what's left at the end of the day. I feel like marketing and growth is always an afterthought, but really like to your point, it really should, that's where the most strategic use of your time is, other than obviously, doing the recording, but sometimes it takes, a tool to help you out with that, take stuff off your plate and so on and so forth. Anyway, last question. I've got this assertion here that you have to be rich to make it in podcasting. What do you think about that?
Well, I guess what does it make it in podcasting? What do you mean by make it?
It could, whatever. It's different for everybody. It's subjective, right?
I don't think you have to be rich. Use what you have. Just get started. That's the first step, is getting started. I'm an entrepreneur. I run a business. We have a digital marketing agency. We have 8 people that work for our team. But if I waited, I've been down the road of buying all the best equipment for things that, like for YouTube, that I wanted to do, and guess what? That great equipment is still sitting there collecting dust. You don't need the best equipment. You just need what you have, and get started. Just start going down the path. And the more you get in there and practice with it, you'll realize the things that you need. But to be rich, nah, you don't need to be rich. Just have a passion for it. Go do it.
A lot of people have said that, like passion, don't try to overthink it, just get after it, just do it. I mean, that's been very common feedback that I've been getting. So thanks for that. That's awesome. And then again, what's your name and the name of your podcast?
My name's BrianCuree, CUREE, and the podcast is called Stories We Live Podcast. And again, the easiest way to find it is just look up Killer Bee, like you've been stung by a bee, Studios, and it'll bring it right up, because we're still in the process of optimizing, like we were just talking about optimizing, right?
There you go. Go check it out, guys. Brian. All right.
Thanks, man.